So I usually like Greg Doucette's content. I'm not gonna exactly suggest it because there's some wild things he has on these videos. I probably shouldn't even be watching them. The random images he puts up is definitely something. But I mean, those editors go crazy. But I usually, generally, with Greg Doucette, I agree with what he's saying a lot of the time. But this time, I, I'm gonna point some things out I haven't seen other people point out, and he's just getting some things wrong. He's just getting some things wrong. If any of you guys think I'm wrong, sound it off in the comments. But yeah, let's get right into the video. So I'm gonna have whenever he has music, I'm gonna mute it. But yeah, see, there we go. He's showing, oh, look where I am at failure. No, I can totally push more. You'll see this is just a little intro. He puts it later in the video. He gets so many things wrong, and in that one clip, it's insane.
Today's video, science is bullshit. And I'm not kidding, I'm not lying, I'm not exaggerating. It's based on lies.
So he's saying science is based on lies. He's basically saying throw it out, throw it out. He has a master's degree in kinesiology. Like he a lot of his things he says is science based. But then he's just saying, oh, throw it all out. What he really means is throw out Jeff Nippard, Mike Isertel, some of the things they say, because they're kind of part of a ring. They rely on each other. You know, Mike Isertel paid for Milo Wolf's PhD. If you don't know who that is, it's just another part of their group, right? And they kind of defend each other. They kind of have similar ideologies, right, in terms of muscle building. And so he says, okay, I don't like how they present information. I think it's the presentation. I don't think it's actually what they're saying that's wrong, although they definitely say some things that's wrong. But he's going to say, hey, he just conflates them with being science. That's not how that works. You cannot be science. The science is the papers, not the person, okay? So you can disagree with Mike Isertel, you can disagree with them. They don't say they're the ultimate authority. But Greg Doucette is saying they're the ultimate authority. I disagree with them, therefore screw science. And it's like that. Let's continue.
Withholding the truth, and I'm going to prove it. With the Twin Towers coming down, Mike Isertel and Jeff Nippard, we've now realized that...
I am glad people aren't seeing them as an ultimate authority because they get things wrong all the time. I still listen to both of them. Mike Isertel, like, no hate, but I'm going to say something that's... Okay, I'm basically hating, actually. All of his new videos, or at least a lot of them, are ChatGPT based, and, like, I've just seen the quality go down. I don't know. I'm not watching his videos as much. But Jeff Nippard, he still puts out some really good content, but I'm not going to lie, like, every video I see something wrong. If you guys want me to break down his ab training, put it in the comments because he got some fundamental things wrong. I'm not going to lie.
Science is what you make of it. That you can cherry pick science and make it say whatever you want. And so I'm going to be going back 6 years.
You can cherry pick the scientific evidence, but that's not science's fault. That's the people.
Years ago, or of which Mike Isertel debates Lyle McDonald, and they're talking about volume. How many sets do you need to build muscle?
So for anyone wondering, let me break this down in a way I don't think anyone else, not many people break it down this far, okay? So the reason why there's a disagreement about volume a lot of the time is because nobody wants to actually have a nuanced discussion, and that makes extremes. When you don't have nuance, people come off as extremes, and so Mike Isertel is that extreme of volume. Lyle McDonald is a lot more conservative. I think he could push his volume a little bit more, but so I think there's some middle ground, but I definitely go towards Lyle McDonald. Lyle McDonald, he is probably the gold standard of the industry, the fitness industry, honestly. And from what I know, he's actually just pretty chill. I emailed him, he responded. You know, he's pretty cool. So basically, Mike Isertel is saying there's some studies that say 52 sets is best for growth, or 40 sets is best for growth, right? And what those studies do is, I'm not actually gonna just talk about the volume debate of that video. I'm gonna talk about their views right now, right? So I'm giving them the best chance I got. So Mike Isertel, he says, okay, well, there's studies that they grew best on 40 leg extension sets per week, like 42, right? And Lyle McDonald would respond to that and say, were they going to failure? And he was like, yeah, the study says they went to failure, or at least like really close to failure. And so Lyle McDonald will say, that is physiologically, anatomically impossible. You are not doing 40 sets of leg of I think it was leg press. If I said leg extension, my bad. And there's many different studies, but this is a specific one. If you're not doing 42 sets of leg press a week and you're going to failure on every single one of them, that's not, you don't need science for that. That's just logic, because if you genuinely know how to train to failure, if you genuinely know how to train really, really hard, you will know it's not just hard, it's literally impossible. You will break something, you will get some type of like rhabdo, like that's like a thing where your muscles start deteriorating. You're not getting to 42 sets per week of leg press. That's not a real thing. What makes it better is they weren't doing that high volume on any other muscle group. They would just do leg press or something like that, one muscle at a time. And the other ones were nothing or maintenance on all these different right? So it's never actually, oh yeah, but you might be able to do 42 sets. Okay, do it. Then why am I not seeing any of them actually do 42 sets? Because you can't do it. I mean, you can definitely do it, but that means you have to be training not intensely at all. And there's issues with that. You have to put in so much volume to make up for not training hard, right? And it's probably not even effective stimulus to fatigue ratio. What I mean by that is if you are training 6-7 reps away from failure, at some point, if you keep going, it's just going to straight up not get you gains. But at a certain extent, you have to make up so much volume to get equal gains. And so that takes so much time. And you know what happens? You get worse stimulus to fatigue ratio, if anything, right? Because you have to build so much fatigue because you're doing it so many times, right? And I guess the stimulus is like, you might get it around there, right? You can probably get the stimulus back up to a certain extent if you just increase the volume, right? There might be a certain range, right, where maybe some people respond to 2 RAR, 3 RAR. What RAR means is reps in reserve, right? So if you're 3 RAR, you're 3 reps away from failure, right? Some people might respond to 2 RAR, 3 RAR, and then upping the volume. Some people might respond to that better. We don't know that. The safest I would definitely say is 1 RAR, because the thing is when you hit failure, there's just a distinct fatigue you get, right? And so you can either get 1 rep below failure, get almost the exact same stimulus, not quite, but almost the exact same stimulus, and there's studies to back that up. Milo Wolf has a good video on it about training to failure. You can just look up his stuff. And if you train 1 rep before, you get almost the same amount of stimulus, not quite, but then you will miss out on the giant fatigue. And again, you actually don't need a study to prove that. You know why? Because you can just go to the gym, right? Go to the gym, go to your home gym, whatever, right? I want you to do a dumbbell bench press or something like that, right? Train to genuine failure, right? Let's say you get 12 reps, right? That's what I was doing. I was doing a deficit push-up. I got like 12 solid, like good form reps, right? You know what I did on my second set? I got 4 reps because I dropped off that much because I trained really hard. I was pushing to my max. And so when you train to failure, your second set is screwed if it's the same muscle. If it's the same muscle, it's screwed. And that's okay if you're just doing 1 set. But if you're doing more than 1 set, you should train at least 1 rep before failure. And then maybe on your last set, you can train to failure. Or you can just not. right? The issue is being scared of fatigue, because Mike Israetel loves talking about fatigue management, guys. Most people don't need to worry about fatigue management. You know why? Because nobody's pushing their volume to the max, right? Almost nobody's doing that. So people keep talking about fatigue and not realizing most people working out at the gym are not pushing their bodies to the anatomical limit because they don't have time, right? So you don't need to be terrified of fatigue. Go and train to failure, honestly, or past failure or whatever for most people, because they don't have the time to even reach failure. They don't even have the time to get anywhere near overtraining, overreaching, whatever. Now, for the people that do, guess what? Most people can't train to failure. Let me show you this. I have a mess of videos, but look at this. This is Lyle McDonald has some good videos on training to failure. Look at this. He's never advocated for training to failure, besides to know where failure is. You have to train to failure every once in a while to actually know where it is. But why are we talking about failure so much? Because guess what? Almost nobody can do it. Everyone's far away from failure. And that's okay. Because failure is literally your body failing. Like, oh no, you can't make your body fail. Right? And if you want the best gains, you really should know where failure is, right? You should be able to push your body that hard. But it's not the end of the world if you can't. Okay, just try and get as close to failure as you can. If you're a couple reps, probably up to 4 reps, but I would really be safer with 3 or 2. Ideally, I would just go 1 rep away from failure. That's what I do. I go 1 rep away from failure. Every once in a while, I accidentally hit failure. But what you're going to look at this, right? This is just him making it up, but this is basically correct. It's really correct, right? People that talk about training to failure, 98%, right? Everyone's failure, fatigue, mongering, like, oh, you can't get anywhere near failure for fatigue, right? But then people who actually know how to train to failure, and then the people that actually discuss the nuances. Almost nobody talks about the nuances. He's got 3 long parts on this. Fantastic. And right, what is muscular failure? And also he did a video on Solomon Nelson's channel where Lyle McDonald is just talking through it. He's interviewing him. This one, if I had to just watch one, I would watch this one. He explains it all. He explains you have to get near failure to activate those higher muscle types, those type 2 muscle fibers. Those are the ones that grow a lot. You got to get somewhere close to failure to actually do that, to activate them, right? So these people saying, oh, 7 RAR, like, you know what I mean? So that's actually the nuance of training to failure. Maybe I can add some more later, but let's actually get to the video. It's literally, I've been there for 1 minute.
Remember, Jeff Nippon, the science-based lifter, the comment deleter, used to say you had to do more sets than last time. Yeah. That it was all about leaving a few reps in the tank, 1 to 3, that
you can leave 1 to 3. He's not advocating for leaving 3, though. He just says up to 3.
Didn't train harder than last time. Only thing is, for years I told him that he was wrong, that he wasn't training hard enough, and eventually he tried what I was saying, and he made an experiment on himself, going against what science actually said. And lo and behold, he makes a brand new training program where he says to train 50% as much as he used to. Where's the science, Jeff? I mean, did you not make a career of being a science-based lifter, a spreadsheet believer? I'm going to show you myself. In fact, I've already recorded the video.
He's just completely
showing
wrong.
You how.
Let me clear one thing up. If you actually watch Jeff Nipper's video, this is him reacting to his previous.
How do training requirements change when you go from a caloric surplus to a caloric deficit? And I think the answer is actually quite simple. It doesn't. But after doing this challenge...
Okay, first of all, watch Lyle McDonald's video on... It's on Solomon Nelson's channel. I'm sorry, I forget what it is. I think it's on bulking or something like that. If you're eating less food, you recover less. That's just a fact, right? You have less food, you have less energy to recover. You have less energy. If you're eating less carbs, you have less energy, right? You're not going to recover as much, therefore lower the volume. I don't need a study for that. That's pretty logical. If you eat half as much food, can you stay at the same volume? If you can, that means you could have done more volume when you were actually eating. I don't need a study for that. That's very obvious. I don't know why people think you have to, like a lot of people think some people say volume needs to increase at a caloric deficit. You know, like, are they talking to like a bodybuilder, like when they're like getting shredded and it's like, oh, you need the volume actually higher? Like, bro, they're lucky to get in the gym, right? So just give them a few hard sets and train them really hard. That's basically all they can do. That's as much as you can do when you're dieting, okay? Drop the volume a little bit.
I want to update that. If you're cutting, I think low volume is the way to go.
Yep.
High volume will still work, but I don't think it's ideal since your recovery is lower in a deficit and low volumes retain muscle just fine as long as you're training hard. If you're bulk,
you need it just takes one third of the volume to keep the gains.
Bulking, I honestly think the best approach might be to keep your volume relatively low for every muscle except one. Blast one muscle with 10 to 20, maybe even 30 sets per week at a time. And then every few months, you can rotate which muscle you're blasting. I think this makes a lot of sense, especially as you get more advanced. And I think once I started...
So what he's saying is if you're on a cut, lower the volume. Greg Doucette is saying, oh, he loves low volume now. He's a low volume. No, that's not what he's saying. He's saying if you're on a cut, lower the volume, right? And if you're bulking, he's still advocating for high volume because he knows you can't do high volume on every single muscle group because we don't have time. So he's still advocating for high volume. He's just saying spam one muscle. And by the way, guys, please do not do 30 sets for a muscle. I mean, it's fine if you want to. If you just accept that if you are doing 30 sets for a muscle, you're not training it hard. And if you're saying, okay, I can't train the muscle hard, right? If you accept in your heart, you say, I cannot train a muscle hard. That's just not me. I'm going to say, okay, up the volume, right? That's okay. But accept that you could be doing it in way less time and probably even gain more muscle if you just trained harder, right? But if you can't train hard, that's okay. Just up the volume, you know. Going to be spending a lot of time, but you do you know what I mean? But you got to understand the nuance. You are not doing 30 sets training actually 1 to 3 reps from failure, specifically 1 rep from failure, which is probably better because those last reps are really important. All right. Now this is my favorite part of it because he's completely wrong. I'm not even going to lie. This is
how to perform sets, for example, 1 rep in reserve, train to failure, and train
I'm gonna
beyond,
let it play
and how it's impossible for the studies to actually study what they've been looking for. I don't care if they use Jeff Nippard's research facility. I don't care if Mike Isertel pays off some guy to do the study. I don't care about any of these things. You can't study what they're trying to conclude. Every study goes for a certain length of time. It's typically 8 weeks or 12 weeks, 16 weeks, maybe. That is not
8
long
to 12
enough
weeks,
to accurately see if one training program is better than another. Here's the problem.
That is such a generalized statement. If you do 2 programs, right? If you do 2 programs and one program gets 1.6 times the muscle growth, right? Like when you did a seated hamstring curl opposed to a lying hamstring curl, right? You can just Google that. If you guys want any of these studies, I can put it in the comments, right? But, inshallah, right? So if you get 1.6 times the muscle growth when you do a seated hamstring curl because you're bending at the hip, that's one of the functions of the hamstring, so the hamstring is getting more stretched. At least 3 of the heads are getting more stretched. And you get 1.6 times the muscle growth. He's saying that doesn't matter because it has not enough people. I'd agree if it had like 2 or 3 or 4, but it has a decent amount. And he says, no, you need to have more than that, 100, 200, 1,000. And it's like, if there's a clear difference, there's a clear difference. Now, I do agree with him. He makes a phenomenal point. If there's no statistical difference, there could be a difference if you had a larger sample size and it went on for longer. But if there's a clear difference, do you think if you just made it longer and got a more population, it would just swing the other way? Like, I don't understand. 1.6 is not close. It's a clear increase.
When you do a lot of volume, for example, 50 sets of biceps, there's going to be a lot of
Ridiculous.
swelling.
Yeah.
Your muscle, it gets inflamed.
Temporarily.
You perhaps are releasing more cortisol. You're going to retain more water. And so whether you measure the bicep with a tape measure or whether you use a DEXA scan, which we know is not accurate, DEXA scans are used.
It depends on the DEXA machine. Some are decent. They can be like 0.5%, kind of close.
To measure bone density, not to see how much muscle you put on. Or even if you're doing body fat percentage, a lot of things can change unrelated to how much muscle you're putting on. And so just because the study said you put on more muscle, did it really?
It's not entirely. So his muscle swelling has been kind of debunked. I disagree with Menhausen in the beginning of this video with this crazy high volume. I've said it before. But he's just putting studies up here. This is undeniable. Most things, 72 hours of training, right? Because this is what it is. Edema is swelling of the muscle. You wait 72 hours, most of it's gone, right? And he even said, you train one time and months later you get less swelling if you train it the same way again, right? This is what swelling is when you're not used to the stimulation, right? It's novel, it's new. And so if these training programs are running for 8 to 12 weeks, they're probably not swelling up. And that's not the whole reason of the muscle growth, is just swelling. They even address this in the studies by saying it's at least not a big part of it. Because you would get adjusted to it in 8 to 12 weeks, right? You might even get adjusted to it in a week or two, let alone 8 to 12. It's just not a good reason. It's just not a good reason to account for all of it. You would also just assume it's even, right? And then you add more volume, it's even, but there's just more swelling. That's what makes it up. But like, wouldn't you suggest if you're that overboard? Because he doesn't even say you get near 20. So you would think it would actually drop down, if anything, because you'd be overtraining. And so then it would have to make so much swelling to overtake the normal amount of sets. And it would go even above. Just you have that much swelling. Like, that's just, no.
Really? Or could it have just been inflamed? Or were you retaining more water? The testing methods are not accurate. An in-body scan.
The testing methods are not accurate, therefore do what I say. How is that more accurate?
Think of it. You're going to say that you put these...
Yeah, he is correct about the in-body scan. I'm trying not to say scam. Like, he plays on words. It's not that accurate. It's a little bit more accurate when you have a group of people and you're measuring it more often because they kind of average out a little bit, but still, it's not good.
People to train one way and these people train another way for a month. For example, when they used my Turk Builder Max, and they did it for a month, 1 pill a day, and he used an in-body scan to see if one group put on more muscle than the other, and they said,
cool,
it's not statistically significant. And so for those of you not versed in statistics, you have no idea how moronic this actually is. To put two groups with about 13 participants and then have them do an in-body scan, which is not even close to being accurate. It's as accurate as saying, hey, 5-year-olds looked at me and guessed my body fat in my before and after, and these 5-year-olds said I got significantly leaner. I went from 18% to 15%. That is how accurate the in-body scan is. And so what's the point of doing a test if it's not accurate?
Most 5-year-olds don't even know what
they use the DEXA scan. It's also not accurate. If they use an MRI, hey, now we're talking, but how many people can afford that? An MRI scan. Not even Jeff Nippard, with the millions of dollars he's making from Macrofactor and so on, not even Jeff Nippard himself has an MRI scan. Don't get me started.
MRI is really good. DEXA scan, it does depend for sure on the machine.
On those before and after transformations, you know, the ones where millions of followers they have. And
also depends if you can fit on the machine. I've seen things where, bigger people are on there and it's like, bro, you literally don't fit on it. Like, it's not scanning you right, which someone else should point out, the people measuring them, not, like, don't know how they're not pointing it out. And if you get super lean, there could be some issues with it measuring you.
Hey, do a 30-day transformation, 90-day transformation. In the before photo, you know what? We're gonna let the tape go a little bit loose around the waist. Oh wow, 32 inches, right? Was it really 32 or was it 30? Or was it 34? Was it an inch higher or lower? It's very easy to cheat. Same with skin fold calipers. If I move the calipers even a half a centimeter, it could be significantly higher or significantly lower. And don't get me started on whether the study is blinded or unblinded. How do we know?
Huge difference.
If the people doing the research know who's in which group,
blinded
they
is very
can have
important.
a bias. For example, I want this group to train to 3 reps in reserve. How do they know they train to 3 reps in reserve? What's that based on? The person observing? Yep, stop. You had 3 reps in reserve. And then they do a study. And you trained to failure. Yep, failure, got it. How do we know that that was 1 to 3 reps in reserve? And how do we know that that was actually to failure? Because you watched.
Sure. We don't know. They've been getting better recently because they're looking at bar speed, how much you slow down. Because if you slow down like 40%, you probably have failure. If you're at least very close. And so, yeah, if anything, when you get farther away from failure, right? 1 RIR is pretty easy to determine, right? If you're an experienced lifter who knows how to train to failure. 2 or 3, once you get to 3 RIR, it's really hard to know. You end up actually thinking, you think you're 3 RIR, but you're actually 5, 6, whatever. And so this is actually working against his point, because he's saying, how do you know they're at 3 RIR and that's equal to failure? They could be at 5, 6, 7 RIR. And it's like, and the study showed they got similar gains. That's working to the point that you can train even farther away from failure and get decent gains still. It's working against his point. The less accurate it is, the further it proves the point. So that's important.
Them fail? You watch them stop pulling that bar down? Great timing. Let me show you for myself.
I'm
demonstrating, and imagine the person with the camera who's Mepsogram, that would be my trainer, saying, Coach Greg, I want you to train to...
Okay, to be fair, they're not, they're actually, they're supposed to be trained people.
To 1 rep in reserve. So you've heard train 1 to 3 reps in reserve. That's not hard enough. I always say train harder than last time. I'm going to show you what does saving 1 in the tank look like, what does failure look like, and then what does actually training hard look like. And so let's see. All right, you're doing your set. I'm close, right? Did that not look like I had 1 rep in reserve? Yeah, look accurate. And so if I'm in the study, they would have said perfect set, great training intensity. You did exactly what you should do. Another study. Let's go to failure.
Yes.
We'll see. So that's failure, right? I couldn't get it down, right? Did that look like I trained to failure? I'm thinking yes. Great job, Coach Greg. You trained to failure. This is exactly what we want in the study. Only was it till failure? What about if I really train hard? Ready?
You had all that left?
Is that failure? That's 4 extra reps, right? How hard could I actually train? For $1,000 a rep, do you think that I'm stopping right there? For $1 million, if my life depended on it, how many more reps could I go? You need 5 more. Is it possible? It's failure. I couldn't possibly get another rep, right? Wrong.
Oh my God.
Was that failure?
Yes.
Let's see. And so, when I hit failure, my warm-up was done.
No.
But y'all think you're training hard. Train harder than freaking last time, and then you'll make some gains. And so...
All right, let's see the issue of this. Because this makes sense until you really, really critically know it and you know some biomechanics, okay?
All right. And then what part of them train? Saying
So,
3 reps. What does
get ready for
saving
this.
one in the tank look like?
Let me
what
break
does
this down
failure
for
look
you.
like? And then what does actually?
So, just so you know, with the back, it's stronger in the stretch position, right? So it's going to be stronger here. And then it's going to be weaker when it's shortened, especially if you get your elbows behind the body, because then your lat's going to shut down, okay? So here it's hardest, and then here it's way easier. So you could be doing full range, and you're done. You're at failure. But then you could keep cranking it at the shortened position for 4 or 5 more reps.
So
Keep that in mind.
All right. You're doing your set.
So he has really clean form here, right? He's barely moving. Now he's going to start moving a little bit. His back is starting to move more. He's compensating. Okay.
I'm close, right? Did that not look like I had 1 rep in reserve? Yeah, look.
I mean, to be
accurate.
fair,
And so
like, yeah,
if I'm in the
won,
study,
yeah.
they would have said perfect set, great training intensity. You did exactly what you should do. Another study. Let's go to failure.
Yes.
We'll see.
And so you know what he does now? Look at this. So he's
They had 1 rep in reserve.
I'm
close, right? Did
he puts up his neck, right? And he
not
cuts
look-
out a part
they
where
would've said perfect
he's
set,
talking
great.
a little bit. There's a specific thing people don't know about the lats, right? There's a specific thing people do not know about the lats. Let me tell you. Lyle McDonald, 2 amazing videos as usual, right? He breaks this down. Basically, the lats lose leverage above 120 degrees, mostly. There's like 4% of the lower lat that kicks in, if I remember correctly, right? But let me demonstrate that to you, right? This is like 120 degrees, right? Me right here. So when I go above this, right, my traps, my sternocostal head of the chest actually takes over, because the sternocostal, the main part, it helps with the shoulder extension, bringing stuff down, right? When it's past 120 degrees especially, right? And so what he's doing
training intensity, you did exactly
is
what you should
he's
do.
moving
Another
up his
study.
neck to talk,
Let's go to failure.
and it's going past the leverage point, right? Effectively making his lats be able to rest, as he's saying, hey, am I at failure? Am I basically letting it rest at the top? And then, oh yeah, of course you're at failure, right? And then, of course, leaning back more and more. And remember how I said you're stronger in the lengthened position at the very top? So he can do this confidently, and then he just has to swing at the end just a little bit, right? And so people don't know that he has a lot of juice up here, but not a lot of juice here. So they realize, oh, he's barely swinging. And it's like, yeah, because he doesn't need to swing for the top half, right? And then he swings here, and then he's swinging a lot more. And so he's not demonstrating training to failure. He's demonstrating how to train past failure, aka give yourself rest and increase the momentum, which is fine under certain circumstances, but he's not demonstrating how people are getting failure wrong.
Well, that's failure, right? I couldn't
Look,
get it down,
he's just
right?
letting himself
Did that
rest.
look like I trained to failure? I'm thinking, yes. Great job, Coach Greg. You trained to failure. This is exactly what we want in the study. Only was it till failure. What about if I really train hard? Ready?
AKA you move your back more and you have more momentum and you gave yourself a break.
You had all that left?
Is that failure? That's 4 extra reps,
Again,
right?
breaking.
How hard could I actually train? For $1,000 a rep, do you think that I'm stopping right there? For $1 million, if my life...
The key part is studies have clearly shown, Milo Wolf has a good video on this again. He actually did the study. If you guys want me to actually show the studies on screen next video, just say it in the comment section, but you guys can Google it if you want. But if you want me to actually put it on screen, just ask. But when you go past 12 reps in a given set, it's way harder to estimate going to failure. And so I counted, he does roughly 17 reps, right? And so we all know when you go past 12, it's harder to predict how close to failure you are. Tom Platz has a famous quote, right? You always have 5 reps left. And that's true if you're doing higher reps, because it's so in your head when it's higher reps. When it's low reps, no, you don't. Okay? No, you don't. When you're doing, let's say, 5 reps in a set, and you train really hard and you barely get that 5th one, do you have 5 more like he's doing? No.
Depended on it. How many more reps could I go? You need 5 more. Is it possible? It's failure. I couldn't possibly get another rep. Right? Wrong.
Oh my god.
He's now rebounding off the top, so he's using momentum more.
Was that failure?
He's starting to, at the end, he's almost turning it into a row. Because a row, if you just go like this and do all that pull down, you have a row now.
Yes.
It's not what it's supposed to be. That is a massive amount of momentum. You can see his legs going crazy.
And so, when I hit failure,
He's gasping for air. It's the issue with high reps. He's getting into cardio.
my warm-up was done. But y'all think you're training hard. Train harder than friggin' last time.
So he's saying train harder than last time, right? And I respect that for people who can't get near failure. Have that in your mindset. Perfect, right? So that's most people. Most people need to train harder than last time. That's where I agree with them. The issue is, if you're genuinely training harder than last time, first of all, this is not how you train hard. I have my reasons, right? But if you're genuinely training harder than last time, you're going to have to start training like a maniac eventually. because you'll just have to keep training harder and harder and harder. It's not practical. It's practical when you're doing like cardio, because cardio is such high rep. If you think about it, basically it's repetitions, right? Biking is just tons of rep. The higher the repetition, the more it's in your head, right? But with weightlifting, you can't do that, right? There's a thing called RPE, rate of perceived exertion. And so 10 on the RPE scale would be you had nothing left, you went to failure. If you're at 9, that's 9 out of 10 exhaustion. People typically say that's 1 rep left, right? Some people say, oh, you can do 0.5, 9.5 or whatever. I don't know about that, but it depends on the person, I guess, if you can really tell. But you're not saying, oh, I'm 9.34, RPE. And then this set, I'm 9.6789, 34. No, you're not saying that. You're saying maybe you're going to get to the 0.5, right? And then you go that. So if every single time you work out, you are training harder, how are you not going to go past 10? Whatever that means, right? Training past the failure or whatever. It's just not practical. It's practical when you're biking, because you can always train harder when you're doing cardio, okay? Like, not always, but, like, come on. Back to the thing. This isn't even training hard. You know why? Because if you train like this, it's so easy to get in your head and not progress, because you don't know what you're doing. How are you supposed to logbook this? Put this I did 5 full reps, and then I did a 20-degree hinge in my back to gain momentum. I did that for 3 reps, and then I did 40-degree hinge, and then I did this, and then I took a break at the top, and then how are you going to write that down and then say I need to make that better by the next time? Progressive overload, right? Progressive overload is the key to muscle growth. How are you going to do that if you have no idea what you're doing? And so just think about it logically. If you're doing this, you have no idea what you're doing, right? You have no idea what you're doing. And when you can get stuck in a loop of not actually increasing, right? You're just doing the same thing, and you think you're training hard and you're not, and your brain's tricking you because it doesn't want to train hard. The only way to actually know whether you're increasing is to logbook it, which means it needs to be consistent. It needs to be able to be at least very similar. I'm not saying you need to be like a robot, but you can't just completely change the form 20 times during one set, take breaks and this and that, and like, how are you going to write that down? So you don't know whether you're improving. You're not know whether you're training harder than last time. This is actually lazier, and people don't realize training 1 rep away from failure is 10 times harder than failure. If you actually go to failure, there's just an arbitrary point where it stops, and like, there you go. 1 rep to failure is actually difficult because you have to go really hard, but you have to stop right before you finish. That's way harder, honestly, in my opinion. Everything has its place. Everything has its place. Training past failure has its place. But you got to not demonize people for not training past failure. Because it's not even best for the gains, right? Under certain circumstances it is, because if you have no volume, you don't have time for volume. Okay, train like a maniac, right? If you only have 10 minutes in the gym, just go crazy on one set on one exercise, do another machine, go crazy, you know what I mean? Whatever. But this is not it for most people. This is not sustainable. And people will quit the gym because it's hard to force yourself to do this every single day. Destroy your body. It's just lower the intensity a little bit, and then you can probably up the volume, and it'll be much more sustainable. Does that mean do 30, 40 sets? No. Okay, just go 1 rep for failure. Occasionally you'll hit failure, and you'll be able to do a little bit more volume, and you'll get much better gains.
And then you'll make some gains. And so can you see, if I cheat even a little bit of body English, little bit of stretch, little bit of rebound, and I can train harder than last time. And so which person A, B, or C, do you train like most? Person A, that's how Jeff Nippod trained for years, only even easier. It looks hard. I was approximating failure. I didn't have 3 reps in reserve, did I? I was near failure. If you're training like that, based on science, 10 to 20 reps per week for any given body part. If I train like that all the time, I'm sure I could probably handle 15, 20 sets, no problem. Or maybe it could be 50. I mean, new research said you need to do more sets. It didn't say may need more volume. It said need more volume. Lyle is debating Mike.
He keeps using Lyle as a reference, but Lyle disagrees. Lyle says, I have never advocated training to failure. He says, I've never advocated training to failure, but he uses him as a source all the time.
Mike is like a politician. He's dancing around the topic.
Lyle,
he understands statistics. I can tell. Mike, he doesn't understand it. And so he simply agrees, he goes along with it. Mike, very good. He could have been a politician. Despite all the science, Jeff did one experiment on himself once and flip-flopped in his entire ideas despite having read for years, perhaps a decade,
he flip-flopped
to do
on his
more
cutting
volume. Sample size uno. I've been training for 40 years, trained thousands of athletes. I knew you didn't need to do 54 sets. I knew you didn't need to do 20, that it depended on how hard you were training. Do you think there's a given body part where I do 10 to 20 sets per week? It's way too much. Why? Because I train like person C. In the 3 examples...
Because you train trying to get every last bit. Not a lot of people need to do... Okay, like that's not the best way to grow, most likely. If you want to do that, fine, because it makes sense, because then it takes way less time. But you shouldn't say, that's the only way to train. You're a wimp if you don't train like that. No, you it's fine not to train like that. Like, you don't have to.
I train hard. Past failure. I can't handle that. Do you really think that there's somehow 50 volunteers that show up to some study for 8 weeks, and the trainer said, hey, I want you to train like Coach Greg. You got to train that hard. Ready, go. Not everyone can train that hard. Some people can. Eric Janicki, most certainly he can do it. Ian Valère, absolutely. Several pros, guys from the past, Dorian Yates, Mike Menser, these guys, they trained very, very hard. And so why do you think Mike Menser said, you don't...
Mike Menser literally trained that hard during contest prep because he was on... Not steroids, it was, some other compound that hypes people up, okay? Starts with an M. You can fill in
all that volume.
The rest.
You got to go all out. Harder than last time, which is what I named my company on.
Consistency,
harder than last time. And so, Jeff, it wasn't because I wanted to make fun of you for not training hard enough. It wasn't because you were injured and you couldn't train your back to failure. It wasn't because of that. It's because for decades I've been train harder than last time.
And the thing is that there is no perfect study. All studies are sitting somewhere on a spectrum.
That's not a hit. Like, that's true. Everything, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's almost nothing that's perfect. Okay, um, you have to go into a religious context to actually prove something's perfect, right? Um, in the visual world, without a religious context, nothing's perfect. So he's just making like kind of like a philosophical point. There's always going to be some issue you can find. Doesn't mean it's not accurate. Or it could just be the best thing we have right now. You do what is the best thing you can.
Completely useless to pretty freaking good. What makes them pretty freaking good? We need to design the study properly up front. We need the MCID, minimally clinically important difference. And so without that, what actually is the purpose of the study? Most of the time, there's going to be no statistically significant difference. There's not enough difference to make a conclusive statement that one is better than the other, whether that's doing more reps or fewer reps, training harder versus training easier, whether the supplement built...
There's scientific rationale for roughly 6 to 30 repetitions being equal, and so many studies have shown this. To say, oh, I'm just going to assume there's a difference, even though nothing shows it. Like, there might be, although it definitely makes sense that they're equal, and that's what I go with. Why would you just assume there's something different? Right? Just, oh, I found some flaw in this. I wish it was a longer study. Therefore, I'm going to throw it away. That's not
built more muscle or it didn't. The results are oftentimes so small that you need a massive sample size. Perhaps 100 or 1,000 even participants.
You don't need that for every single
8
thing.
weeks, but for perhaps 8 months or even 8 years. And so just because
you don't need things for 8 years to conclude something. Okay? Just because you train for 40 years. Like, yeah, but those people were tons of different people, placebo-controlled. There's actual research, people there and stuff like that.
Points to one conclusion, it doesn't mean it's accurate. And so, for example, when Jeff Nippard reduced his training volume in half, he did this. He stated he got stronger and built more muscle, but that's for a brief period of time. Before
confounding variables, because it's just him. You know what's the issue? His main program, he was training 2 hours a day. 2 hours a day, his main program. And so when he cut his volume, do you think he increased his gains potentially from DEXA scan not being as accurate, or because in his video he increased his gains while he lowered his volume during a cut, right? It could be DEXA scan being less accurate. It could be, I don't know, that he was training 2 hours before, and so half his workout was him slopping around because you can't train 2 hours for 2 hours hard, okay? In weightlifting, your body doesn't work like that. So when he cut down his volume, it was cutting down his time at the gym. I believe it was 45 to an hour long. Okay, what if he just did 2 hour long workouts separate in the day? There's so many confounding variables. You cannot take stuff from a case study. It's interesting. Let's note that for later, but it's not proven that much. So I'm going to leave this for another part, but then I'll probably film right after this. But yeah. If you guys have any suggestions, just leave it in the comments.